but I also didn't want to be dragged into this mess with her. I could feel the weight of the decision I had to make settling in. What now? Could I help her? Should I? Sarah, I started, my voice trembling now. What do we do now? How do we get out of this? The silence between us felt thick, heavy. Sarah's hands were trembling as she wiped away a tear, her eyes never leaving mine. I could see the fear in her expression, and it was the kind of fear that made me want to do something, anything, to make it stop. But at the same time, my brain was screaming to step back, to run far away from whatever mess she was tangled in. Do you know who they are? I asked, my voice shaking slightly. How long has this been going on? She shook her head, clearly struggling with the truth, but then she spoke, her words barely above a whisper. I've been trying to get out of it for months, but every time I try, they threaten me. They say if I go to the police, they'll hurt you, or they'll ruin everything. I didn't want to bring you into this. I swear, I didn't. I felt my chest tighten, a mixture of frustration, concern, and betrayal swirling inside me. She hadn't wanted to bring me into this? How could she have kept something so dangerous from me? I wanted to yell at her, to demand answers, but instead, I just stared at her, too shocked to do anything but absorb what she was saying. So, what now? I asked, my voice low. What do we do? What's the next step? Sarah seemed to shrink in on herself. I don't know. I've been trying to gather evidence, trying to find a way out. But I need your help. I don't want you to be caught in the middle of this mess, but I need you to be careful. I let out a slow breath, trying to process everything. So, you've been gathering evidence, but you haven't gone to the police yet? She nodded. I didn't trust them at first. I didn't know who to trust. But now, after everything, I think it's time. I just need a little more time. Time. That word echoed in my head like a warning. Time was the one thing we didn't have. I had no idea who these people were, or how far they'd go. The fact that she hadn't gone to the police already made me question everything. Was she really just too scared? Or was there something else? Something she wasn't telling me? I reached for her hand, feeling the warmth of her fingers in mine. Despite everything, I couldn't just turn my back on her, not yet. Okay, I said, trying to calm the storm brewing inside me. But we're going to the police. We're going to do this the right way. I'm not letting you handle this on your own anymore. She looked at me, her eyes wide with a mix of relief and fear. Are you sure? It's dangerous. They'll come after you, too. I don't care, I replied, the words coming out more firmly than I expected. We'll deal with it together. I'm not going to leave you to face this alone. There was a long pause, and for a moment, it felt like the weight of the decision hung between us. Sarah was still holding my hand, but her grip was weaker now, as though she was unsure of where we stood, unsure of what was going to happen next. I'm sorry, she whispered, the guilt in her voice thick. I never wanted this. I never meant to hurt you. I squeezed her hand tighter, trying to reassure her. I know. We'll get through this. But we have to trust each other. No more secrets, Sarah. You have to be honest with me, completely. She nodded, her tears starting to fall freely now. I will. I promise. We sat there in the quiet of the coffee shop, the weight of our decisions pressing down on us. I wasn't sure what the future held or what the police would do, but for the first time in a while, I felt like we were on the same side. The storm wasn't over, but maybe, just maybe, we could weather it together. The next few days felt like they passed in a haze. I went through the motions of daily life, work, errands, even small talk with friends, while my mind was constantly occupied by the conversation I'd had with Sarah. I kept thinking about her words, I'm being blackmailed. And every time I thought I could breathe again, I felt the weight of the situation come crashing down. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Something wasn't adding up. Why hadn't Sarah gone to the police earlier? What was she still hiding? But despite the questions gnawing at me, I couldn't ignore the trust one had in her. She'd admitted everything to me. She was scared, and I knew the only way we were going to make it through this was if I supported her. On the third day after our meeting, Sarah and I sat down together in my apartment, papers and notes scattered on the table between us. She had been compiling a list of the people who might be involved in this, trying to get organized. She was surprisingly thorough, and seeing how much effort she'd put into preparing for this moment gave me a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as in over her head as I had feared. "We need to go to the police tomorrow," I said, my voice steady. "We've waited long enough. The longer we wait, the worse this gets." Sarah looked at me, hesitation written all over her face. "I know," she whispered. "But I need you to understand, there's still so much I don't know. They've been following me, keeping tabs on everything. I'm not sure what they're capable of." I nodded, trying to reassure her. "I get it. But we can't keep living in fear, Sarah. You need to trust that we'll be okay. I'll be with you every step of the way." She gave a weak smile, though her eyes still held uncertainty. "I'm just scared," she admitted, her voice barely audible. I reached across the table, gently taking her hand in mine. "I know. But we're going to do this together. We'll figure this out." We spent the rest of the evening going over everything Sarah had gathered. She showed me the names of people she believed were involved, all of them connected to a network that seemed far more complicated than I could have ever imagined. But there was one name that stood out, a name she'd circled on the list, Victor Hayes. "That's the guy," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "He's the one who's been calling the shots. He's the one pulling all the strings." I stared at the name for a long time, trying to make sense of it. "Who is he? Do you know anything about him?" She bit her lip, thinking. "Not much. He's dangerous, though. I've heard rumors. But he's the one who made the threats. He's the one who promised to hurt you if I didn't cooperate." I felt my blood run cold. A real threat, not just an empty promise. This guy, whoever he was, had been keeping tabs on us, had been watching Sarah, and now, I was part of it too. "We need to take this to the police," I repeated, my voice firm. "They'll know what to do. But we can't wait any longer." Sarah nodded, the fear still there but replaced by a determination I hadn't seen before. "Okay. I trust you." And for the first time in days, I actually believed that maybe we were doing the right thing. The next day, we'd go to the police together. No more hiding, no more secrets. It was time to face whatever this was head on. I just hoped it wasn't too late. The day we decided to go to the police felt like the calm before a storm. Everything was quiet, almost unnervingly so. The weight of our decision was heavy on my shoulders as I drove Sarah to the police station. I could tell she was nervous, I was too. But I was also resolute. We couldn't keep running from this. When we pulled into the parking lot, my heart started to race. I hadn't realized just how much anxiety I'd been holding onto until now. It wasn't just about the police or the blackmail. It was the uncertainty. The unknown. What if they didn't believe us? What if Sarah got arrested or worse? What if this whole thing was bigger than we could handle? Sarah didn't say much as we walked into the station. She kept her eyes on the ground, her hand clutched tightly in mine. Her fear was palpable, and I hated seeing her like this, so broken and vulnerable. But we had to do this. There was no other choice. We walked up to the front desk, where a woman behind the counter looked up from her computer. She didn't smile, but her expression softened a bit when she saw us. "How can I help you?" she asked, her voice professional but not unkind. "We need to speak with someone about a serious situation," I said, my voice steady despite the nerves twisting in my stomach. "We have information about an ongoing blackmail case." Her eyebrows furrowed, and she gave us a quick once-over, sizing us up. "Wait here," she said, and disappeared into the back. We sat down in the uncomfortable plastic chairs near the desk, the silence between us heavy. I tried to focus on Sarah, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. She was holding her breath, her fingers trembling in mine. I wanted to reassure her, but I wasn't sure how. Minutes passed, and then the woman returned, followed by a tall, older man in a suit, Detective Hall. My stomach lurched at the sight of him. "Good to see you again," he said, nodding at me. "And you must be Sarah. Please, follow me." We followed him down a hallway to an interrogation room, small, sterile, and impersonal. The harsh lighting made everything feel colder than it needed to be. As we sat down at the table, I felt like I was sinking further into a nightmare. Detective Hall took a seat across from us, his expression unreadable. "All right, Sarah," he said, his voice serious but not unkind. "We've been tracking some suspicious activity, and your name has come up. I'm glad you're here, but you need to understand that this isn't going to be easy." "I know," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "But I need to tell you everything. I didn't want to bring anyone into this, but I can't do this alone anymore." Detective Hall nodded, and then looked at me. "You're sure you want to do this?" he asked me. "You're involved now too. There's no turning back once we get this ball rolling." I didn't hesitate. "Yes. I'm not leaving her to deal with this by herself. We're in this together." Hall gave a sharp nod. "All right. Let's start from the beginning." And so, Sarah told her story. Every detail. She explained how she had been lured into the web of Victor Hayes and his associates, how they had manipulated her into a corner, and how she had tried to get out without involving anyone. She explained the threats, the surveillance, the way they had used fear to control her every move. She even told him about the mysterious phone calls, the demands, and the promises of violence. I couldn't believe it as she spoke. She had been living in a world I knew nothing about, and now I was in it too. But despite the weight of her confession, I could see a flicker of relief in her eyes as she told the truth. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was finally sharing the burden with someone who could help. Detective Hall listened attentively, taking notes. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of him. "This is serious, Sarah," he said, his voice low. "Victor Hayes is a dangerous man. We've been trying to track him for a while, but he's been elusive. We'll need to move carefully from here on out." I nodded, feeling the gravity of the situation settle in. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice tight. "We start an investigation," Hall replied. "But we'll need your help. You've got the information we need to build a case against him. We'll protect you, both of you. But you have to be honest, no matter how hard it gets. If you want this to end, we need your full cooperation." Sarah nodded silently, her hands clenched tightly on the table. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said, her voice stronger than before. "Good," Hall said. "We'll start putting a plan in motion. For now, stay low, keep your distance from anyone who might be involved in this. We'll handle the rest." As we left the station, I felt a sense of weight lifting off my shoulders, but it wasn't over. It was just the beginning. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I had hope. I wasn't alone in this anymore. Sarah wasn't alone. And together, we were going to bring Victor Hayes down. In the days following our meeting with Detective Hall, the tension in the air seemed to grow thicker. The police had assured us that they would take care of things, that they were working behind the scenes to track Victor Hayes and his network. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were sitting on a powder keg, waiting for the explosion. The threats, the blackmail, everything that had happened before, it didn't just disappear because we went to the police. No, it was only a matter of time before the people behind it all realized what we had done. Sarah and I tried to go back to normal life, but it wasn't possible. The phone calls stopped for a while, but I found myself constantly checking my phone, half expecting a new message or a call. Sarah was still jumpy, every little sound making her flinch, every knock on the door sending her into a state of alert. It wasn't the same as it had been before. We were living in a world where danger was always just around the corner. One evening, a few days after our meeting with Hall, we sat on the couch, the TV playing in the background but neither of us really paying attention. Sarah had her legs pulled up to her chest, and I could tell she was lost in thought. She hadn't said much that day, and I wasn't sure if it was because she was still processing everything or because she was scared to face what might come next. I can't stop thinking about it, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. About what? I asked, turning my attention to her. About what happens if they find out we went to the police, she said, her voice shaking. What if they come after us? We'll be ready for it, I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. The police are handling it now. They're tracking them. They won't get away with it. She shook her head, her eyes filled with fear. But what if they do? What if they hurt you? Or worse? The fear in her voice made my stomach twist. I wanted to reassure her, tell her everything would be fine, but I wasn't sure if I believed it myself. All I knew was that we were in this together, and no matter what happened, I wasn't going to leave her alone in this fight. I won't let anything happen to you, I said, my voice steady. And I'm not going anywhere. We're in this together, remember? She gave me a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. I know. But I can't stop feeling like something bad is coming. I pulled her into a tight hug, wishing I could take away her fears, wishing I could make it all go away. But all I could do was hold her and promise that we'd face whatever came together. We had to believe that the police would protect us, that the evidence would be enough to bring Victor Hayes and his people down. But there were so many unknowns. And in a way, that was the hardest part. The next morning, we got a call from Detective Hall. I could tell by his voice that something was wrong. We've made a breakthrough, he said, his tone serious. We've traced one of the accounts linked to Hayes, and it's been moving a lot of money in the last few days. We're closing in on him. I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. This was good news. But it also meant that the clock was ticking. Victor Hayes was on the move, and whatever plans he had were coming to a head. We'll need you two to stay put for now, Hall continued. We're getting closer to making an arrest, but until then, we need you both to remain in a safe place. We'll keep you updated. After the call ended, I looked at Sarah, who was holding her breath, waiting for me to say something. Detective Hall said they're getting close. They're tracking him, I said, trying to sound reassuring. But we need to stay cautious. It's not over yet. She nodded, but I could see the worry in her eyes. I just want it to be over. I want to feel safe again. We will, I promised her. We just have to hang on a little longer. That night, we stayed inside, doors locked, windows shut. It felt like we were hiding from something we couldn't see. And in a way, that was the most terrifying part, the not knowing, the feeling of being watched, of being vulnerable. I kept my phone close, waiting for the next update. But nothing came. The silence that followed felt suffocating, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to break. I wasn't sure what would happen next, or when. But I knew one thing for sure, the moment things went down, Sarah and I would be right in the middle of it. And I wasn't sure if we were ready for what was coming. It happened when we least expected it. One evening, a week after our last conversation with Detective Hall, the phone rang. It was late, way later than we usually stayed up. I had just turned off the TV and Sarah was lying next to me, still too tense to sleep. The call came through, the ringtone sharp in the silence of the room. I grabbed the phone before Sarah had a chance to react. The number was unknown, and for a second, I hesitated. My heart thudded in my chest. It could be a prank, a threat, or worse, a final warning. But it could also be the update we'd been waiting for. Hello? I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. It was Detective Hall. We've got him, he said, his voice tight, urgent. We've got Victor Hayes. But it's not over. He's been monitoring your movements. You need to leave your apartment immediately. Now. I felt my blood run cold. What? But, how? I thought you said you were getting close. We were, but Hayes went underground. He's been planning his next move, and now he knows you two are involved. He's coming for you. Sarah sat up in an instant, her eyes wide. She could hear Hall's voice through the phone, and the panic on her face mirrored what I was feeling. Where should we go? I asked, trying to stay calm despite the chaos that was unfolding in my mind. We've arranged for a safe location, Paul continued. We'll send someone to get you. But you need to move fast. Don't wait. Trust no one except us. The line went dead. I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at the phone, processing what I had just heard. Hayes was coming. After everything we had been through, it had come to this. We need to go, I said, looking at Sarah. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. I had never seen her like this before. Right now, she whispered, her voice shaky. Where? What are we supposed to do? Pack a bag, just a few things, I said, moving quickly to grab my keys. I knew we couldn't stay here any longer. The police might be on their way, but Hayes was too dangerous to take chances with. I watched as Sarah moved slowly, as though she couldn't fully process the situation. I helped her pack her things in a bag, trying to keep calm, trying to focus. But everything felt out of control. The world around us seemed to be crumbling, and all I could think about was keeping her safe. Within minutes, we were out the door. I didn't even know where we were going, I just knew we had to get away from here. We hurried down the hallway, through the parking lot, and into the car. As I started the engine, my eyes flicked nervously to the rearview mirror. I half expected to see someone following us, but nothing was there. Not yet. We drove in silence, the sound of the engine the only thing filling the car. I glanced over at Sarah, who was staring out the window, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. I wanted to say something to reassure her, but the words stuck in my throat. We were in too deep. There was no turning back now. After what felt like hours, a black SUV pulled up alongside us. I recognized the man who stepped out, a tall, broad-shouldered officer from the police station. He didn't waste time. He opened the passenger door, gave us a quick, reassuring look, and motioned for us to follow him. The SUV led us to a small, nondescript building on the outskirts of town, away from the main roads. It looked like a safe house, bland, ordinary, designed to blend in. The officer ushered us inside, where another detective was waiting. We're safe here for now, the detective said. We've secured the perimeter, and we have agents on standby. You'll be safe here until we've finished processing Hayes and his associates. I nodded, but the feeling of dread didn't lift. Hayes was still out there, and even though the police had him in their sights, I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't finished. There was more to this story, and we were still caught in the middle of it. Sarah clung to my side, her face pale and drawn. She looked exhausted, as if the weight of everything had finally taken its toll. But she was strong, stronger than I had ever realized. We had made it this far, and we'd make it through whatever came next. What happens now? I asked, turning to the detective who had greeted us at the safe house. We wait, he replied. We've got Hayes locked down. But the next phase is critical. We need to take him down completely before he can retaliate. But we've got him on the ropes now. The next few days felt like an eternity. We stayed in the safe house, the walls feeling like they were closing in around us. It was strange, being in a place that was supposed to be safe, but still feeling exposed. We didn't leave, didn't speak to anyone outside of the police. Every knock on the door, every phone call, sent us into a panic. Then, the call came. Hayes had been arrested. His network was dismantled, and his associates had been taken into custody. The threat was finally over. For the first time in months, I felt the knot in my stomach begin to loosen. But as much as I wanted to celebrate, I knew that the past few months had changed us both forever. The fear, the betrayal, the uncertainty, it was all part of our story now. As we left the safe house and returned to our lives, I couldn't help but reflect on everything we had gone through. There were lessons to be learned, lessons about trust, about standing by the people you love, no matter what. And above all, about the power of facing your fears, no matter how overwhelming they seem. Life wasn't going to be the same. But we had made it through. And in the end, that was enough.